Board of Commissioners. We have two meetings this evening. We have a special Board of Commissioners meeting and a Finance Committee meeting. So before we start, please silence your cell phones. Amplifying equipment is available up here if you are having difficulty hearing during the meeting. In addition, the audio system in this room is equipped with a telecoil if you have a hearing device that lets you connect to that. When floor is open for public comment, because we have some public hearings this evening, comment will first be taken by people who are in the room and then from those who are attending virtually by Zoom. If you are in the room, we ask that you use this podium to your left, to my right, and speak directly into that microphone. If the microphone is not as a good height for you, please take it out of the podium. We cannot hear you if you are not speaking directly into that microphone. If you are attending virtually, when we turn to public comment from people who are attending virtually, if you raise your virtual hand, the Township Secretary will promote you into the room where you'll be able to make your comments. Also, if you're making comments this evening or any other board meeting, we ask that you introduce yourself at the beginning, say where in the township you live, and just be aware that it's a practice of this board that we take comments from everyone before we respond to anyone. One last announcement, beginning in January 2024, written comments submitted by the public in advance of the township meeting will no longer be included as part of the formal record. In keeping with the practice that we had before COVID, we will continue to circulate all those written comments to the entire board. Everyone on this board has an opportunity to read them, but we won't be summarizing them into the 2 or 3 sentences that get read by me and included in the public comments. We'll just, at this point, revert to how we did things before COVID. Okay, so that's the announcements. Will the November 29th, 2023 special meeting of the Lower Merion Board of Commissioners please come to order and all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Secretary, will you please call the roll?
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Bernheim is asked to be excused. Mr. Churchill.
Here.
Mr. Courtney.
Here.
Mr. Gavin.
Present.
Mr. Grimes.
Here.
Ms. S. Kramer. Here. Ms. G. Kramer.
Here.
Mr. McComb.
Here.
Mr. McKeon.
Here.
Ms. O'Neill.
Here.
Mr. Stevenson.
Present.
Mr. Whalen.
Here.
Mr. Zeloff.
Here.
Mr. Sinai.
Here.
Mr. President, we have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. First item on the agenda is the public hearing and adoption of ordinance, Chapter 155 zoning for low-income multifamily housing. And so I will start by opening the public hearing and seeing if anyone has any comment, anyone in the public has comment on this ordinance. It's on page 1, or I guess page 2 of your packet. Anyone? Seeing no one here. Madam Secretary, anyone online would have comment?
No one online has their hand raised.
Okay. So we had one written comment. Ethan Frank from Marion Station wrote with regard to the parking mandates in the proposed LIMH ordinance, noting that removing the parking requirement could lead to lower housing unit costs, resulting in more affordable housing. Okay. With that closes the public hearing on this ordinance. I'm going to make a motion and to move that we adopt ordinance number 4283, which is an ordinance to amend the code of the Township of Lower Merion, Chapter 155, entitled Zoning, to provide a definition for multifamily housing, low income, LIMH, to permit LIMH in the MDR2 residence district, to provide side yard setback, building height, and density standards for LIMH uses, to provide for buffering of LIMH uses, to provide parking regulations for LIMH uses, to establish qualifying standards for LIMH properties, and to provide regulations for the expansion of LIMH uses onto adjacent properties. This ordinance was authorized for advertisement of a stated meeting of the Board of Commissioners held October 18th, 2023, and duly advertised in the November 12th, 2023, and November 19th, 2023 editions of Mainline Times and Suburban. Thank you, Vice President Gavin, for the second. So from the board, anyone wish to respond to public comment or have questions for staff or any comments? Commissioner Stevenson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to thank staff and members of the Affordable Housing Committee and members of this Board of Commissioners for supporting this. This is a part of the work that the township's commitment has been to finding creative ways to look at affordable housing. And as we know, in a situation where affordability on all levels has been increasingly hard. While we'll support this, I would also use this time to say to my colleagues that we should use our current zoning and look at that, and to look at how we can expand this kind of work, because there are opportunities across the board if we've become even more creative beyond the boundaries that we have looked at here for such type of housing. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Commissioner Stevenson. Anyone else wish to comment? Okay, seeing none. Madam Secretary, I believe this calls for roll call vote.
Thank you, Mr. President. For the adoption of ordinance 4283, Mr. Churchill.
Yes.
Mr. Courtney.
Yes.
Mr. Gabbard.
Aye.
Mr. Grimes.
Yes.
Ms. S. Kramer.
Yes.
Ms. G. Kramer.
Yes.
Mr. McComb.
Yes.
Mr. McKean.
Aye.
Ms. O'Neill.
Aye.
Mr. Stevenson.
Aye.
Mr. Whalen.
Yes.
Mr. Zeller.
Aye.
Mr. Sinai.
Yes.
The ordinance is duly adopted.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. So we're now turning to a public hearing on the proposed 2024 budget and proposed 2024 to 2029 capital improvement program. This public hearing was authorized for advertisement at the stated meeting of the Board of Commissioners held October 18th, 2023, and duly advertised in the November 5th, 2023 edition of the Mainline Times and Suburban. And just for everyone's reference, this is the public hearing part. Later, we turn to this in the Finance Committee meeting, and then on December 13th is the final vote. I'd like to call on Mr. Eric Traub for his presentation.
All right, thank you, President Sinai. I'm going to talk for just a very short amount about the budget. Just going to share my screen here, and then open it up for public comment and any board response.
That was short.
All right, so just very quickly on the township's budget, just to reorient anyone in case there is a Thanksgiving hangover and you've forgotten what I've said before. So the proposed budget in terms of the general fund, $77 million, a $4.5 million budget gap. Overall, when you turn and look at the general fund revenues, $72.5 million, about half of that comes from real estate taxes, most of it from the property taxes, about a quarter from business taxes, and then a splitting of the final quarter, as you can see on the screen up above. On the expenditure side, about 38% from police, fire is another 5%. You see building and planning and public works, and then parks and recreation, libraries. Debt service has been down from about 17% about 5 or 6 years ago to now about 12%, and then general government. Where we spend those dollars, the majority goes to people and their benefits. It costs money to have people to pick up your trash, to mow the parks, put together the financial reports, staff the libraries, things of that nature. The debt service, obviously that is a significant component that pays for all those capital assets. It is a significant capital improvement plan this year. And then the final pie slice, about 20%. You can see a few of the categories that makes that up. In terms of staffing, 3 additional full-time positions. You can see the budgeted wage increases throughout the various work groups. I mentioned the CIP just a couple seconds ago. Here's kind of a list. $50.4 million is the highest amount, at least in my tenure here. It is an ambitious capital program for us to get through, headed up by the Ardmore Avenue Community Center, which hopefully we'll be seeing bids on in the next 3 to 4 months. Stormwater management and many other projects as well. When we look at going forward in terms of the general fund's financial forecast, we do have a budgeted gap this year. We do anticipate that will more slowly than in past forecasts, grow. If there are no changes in terms to tax rates or annual services, obviously those things are always at the discretion of the board as we move forward. In terms of this, just another kind of representation of the forecast, lets you kind of see the fund balance and at least how it is projected to decline over time. Of course, generally in the last few years, especially the last 2 to 3, post-2020, we've generally outperformed our forecasts. So tonight here, we're doing our second public hearing. We'll be doing budget amendments as part of the finance amendment later on this evening, and then full steam ahead for 2 weeks from now to the adoption of the budget. So with that, I'll end my comments and open it up for any public comment or board response. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Traub. So at this point, we're going to open the floor for public comment on the budget and the CIP. If anyone in the room wishes to make a statement, the podium is available here. Okay. Jody, do we have anyone online?
I do have Miss Isabel Melvin. I'm going to promote her to a panelist.
Okay.
Bear with me here. Okay. She is online.
Hi. It's, I'd like to comment on the
Okay,
local budget.
if you could
Is this the right time to do
so
that?
Ms. Melvin, so, sorry, comment on the what?
On the budget.
Yeah, this is the time to do that, and if you could introduce yourself, that'd be great.
Okay, I'm Isabel Melvin from Wynwood. Thanks to everyone for all your hard work on this budget.
According to a Lower Merion Facebook post, we are looking for a tree canopy assessment person. This is great. After we assess the Lower Merion tree canopy, we need more money, more investment in implementation. An experienced, knowledgeable green coordinator land steward, as recommended in our 2015 comprehensive plan. We could subcontract this position. We need an experienced green coordinator, land steward in the field, overseeing and implementing our green infrastructure projects, not just assessment. I know we have our competent sustainability manager. She cannot be all things to all people. The sustainability manager plans, the land steward green coordinator makes it happen. The land steward green coordinator oversees the big Lower Merion greening picture and coordinates departments, building and planning, parks and rec, public works, works with the Shade Tree Commission, the EAC, and our township arborist. I know we have won awards on how beautiful our presentation of the Lower Merion budget is. Let's evolve. Let's be leaders. Let's be bold. Let's embrace change. Let's win awards for improvements of our tree canopy. Hire a green coordinator, land steward for all the world to see. Our lives depend on it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Melvin. Jody, anyone else online?
Yes, we have Bruce Ludwig. I'll promote him to a panelist now.
I think I'm on screen. Yes.
You are? Please go ahead.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Bruce Ludwig. I'm living on Oak Springs Road in Bryn Mawr part of our township. I'm a long-term resident of our township, having grown up here myself and raised my family here. I've also, like other people, including the prior speaker, have volunteered to plant trees in the township as a tree tender, which leads me to the topic of my comment. I think we all know the ecological value of trees. Trees, in particular, native trees, benefit the environment in multiple ways, including mitigating climate change and stormwater runoff. Moreover, they enhance the aesthetics of our community. Given that value, the proposed budget for new street tree plantings is woefully inadequate. As you had just learned, first of all, Lower Merion still, with its proposed budget, will have a fund balance of over 28%, which is, I think, very, very high, more than is needed to maintain your bond rating. According to the budget document, the Public Works Shade Tree Commission removed 195 damaged or diseased trees in 2023. This number does not count the number of street trees, I'm only talking street trees, removed by homeowners who are unaware of the permitting process to do so. Yet the proposed budget for 2024 is to plant 205 street trees. This is simply treading water. We are basically only replacing the trees in the right-of-way that we've lost in the prior year. The number of new trees should be at least double so that there is a net gain over those that are lost or that will be lost. So it's a modest proposal for an increase in a small part of your budget. Finally, I would suggest, at least going forward, that the Board of Commissioners address the decreased tree canopy in Lower Merion in its capital budget. This form of green infrastructure is as much an investment in our future as many other capital items. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. Jody, do you have anyone else online?
We do not.
Okay. With that, we're going to close the public hearing, and I'll ask my colleagues if they have any questions for staff or response to public comment. Commissioner McKeon.
Thank you, President Steiner. I just wanted to respond briefly, just to explain, because I think some people may not understand exactly what the Lower Merion Shade Tree Division does, how it works, and kind of what it does offer back to the township. There's a Shade Tree Commission and also Shade Tree Division. The Shade Tree Commission is a resident advisory board of volunteers. The Shade Tree Division is one of, I believe, 7 divisions of Public Works, and that's a full-time division. The head of the Shade Tree Division is Joseph Marco, a certified arborist. Mr. Marco and Shade Tree have actually taken a real role, I think, as leaders in the region. For example, Mr. Marco's gone around to other townships like Upper Moreland, given presentations to help teach them how to set up their own Shade Tree Commission and Shade Tree Division, because a lot of other townships and municipalities don't have anything. So they've worked very hard. They have jurisdiction over the 70,000 township trees that are in the right-of-way and in public parks. We do not have jurisdiction, the township, over trees that are on private property. The township can't go and say we budgeted for 30,000 more trees this year and we want to put 6 of them on this person's house. A lot of that really falls on the homeowners to make those decisions, and people have to be responsible on their own, and if they have the ability to plant a tree, go and do it. The areas to plant trees for the township, a lot of them are in the right-of-ways. And the right-of-way, if you don't know, that's that path in between the sidewalk and the street. It's narrow. It's difficult to add more trees to the right-of-way. People could say, you know, I can find 500 different locations to add trees. It's difficult. The township has trouble planting the 200 new trees that it gets allocated just because of limited spaces on the right-of-way. So I think that Public Works has tried very hard to keep the trees going. You know, we don't want to reduce our tree canopy, but at the same time, the jurisdiction is just over the public streets, or public areas rather, and not private property. And for the public area, that's where we're budgeting, and that's why when you say only 200 trees, yeah, it's tough to even find spots for those 200 trees on public property. It's different on private property, and I think some civics and a lot of residents have worked very hard to try to get private property owners to plant more trees. And that's something that we can all really, I think we should take a step back and look at that to see what we can do ourselves to add another tree to the property or add another couple trees to the property, because that adds up when you consider, I don't know, there's 15,000 homes or so in the township. So that's my message to anyone out here. Think if you can add a tree tonight, look in your backyard, see if there's a spot to add a tree. Each tree makes a little bit of a difference.
Thank you, Commissioner McKeon. Commissioner Churchill.
Thank you. Just to segue, Commissioner McKeon, in the past, we've allocated a certain number of trees to be planted, and private neighbors either do not want them, or we've really had a surplus of trees. So we will continue to, we hear you. I understand that it's like we've lost 12% of our tree canopy over a certain number of years, so we certainly have to address that. And the good news is the Friends of Penguin Park over the past 2 years have planted over 350 saplings and bushes. I hope I have that figure correct, Donna Heller, but I think that's about that. Okay. So there are friends of various parks that are working very hard to increase our tree canopy, and Penguin Park is one of the good news about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Churchill. Commissioner Gilda Kramer.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions for our staff regarding this tree planting issue. Do we have the additional staff capacity to plant additional street trees? If we have in the right of way, if we find the locations, because it's my understanding that the recent inquiries for locations have produced lots and lots of people who want them, and have produced quite a number of acceptable locations for new street trees in the right of way.
If I may, it's not a question of staff time. We typically do not get enough residents willing to take the tree in front of their house, and even when we do, many residents will say, "I'll take one," but when we go out to check the site, there are utilities in the way, and we can't plant there. So there's a lot of reasons why we're not able to plant much more than the 200 trees that we have budgeted. But it's not a staff issue. We actually issue a contract for the purchase and planting of trees. So we subcontract that.
If we were able to find the locations, how much would it cost for us to add, say, another 100 trees?
I would just say in October, we did the award for 200 trees. That was approximately $90,000. So you can do the math. It's probably about another $45,000 if we had the locations for another 100 trees.
And what would it cost us to get trees to do as a giveaway program, for example, just if we were going to try to give people trees to put on their own private property? Do we have any idea what the trees themselves would cost?
So again, just based upon this most recent bid that we had, there are different species and such, but the bidder, at least the low bidder in this case, their price was on a per tree basis roughly $450 a tree. So that isn't just for the tree, that is also for their service to bring that tree there and actually do the initial planting. And I think they have a couple of waterings that they have to do per that initial contract. So it might be a little bit less than that if you're just physically just buying the tree, but I think that's at least an estimate that the board could use.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you. Commissioner Courtney.
Thank you, President Slant. Thank you to the commenters for pushing us to go further. I just wanted to talk about some of the priorities as a board we've already established. So back in the September 27th Sustainability Committee. Meeting. We talked about focus areas for 2024 that were reflected in our sustainability plan that we had adopted a few months earlier. And I pulled up the memo here. I just want to talk specifically about what we said we wanted to focus on for natural resources management. And it's a township-wide approach to natural resource protection, establish benchmarks, develop plans, explore strategies to further incorporate natural resource protections into municipal operations, and increase tree canopy and green infrastructure throughout the township. And some of the potential recommendations here were to develop programs to encourage tree planting, maintenance, and protection on private property, and to explore ordinances to support tree protection on private property. So I read this out just to say that this is an issue we are working on. This is an issue this board has said is a priority for us, and that our sustainability manager will be actively focused on in 2024. And as for the recommendation around a land steward, if that is something that staff and our sustainability manager feels is something that we need, I fully expect it to come forward in 2024, and I expect we will all vote in favor of it. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Courtney. Any other commissioners? Commissioner O'Neill.
Oh, thank you very much. And thank you for the background on this. I would just like to reemphasize that if there is an overage of trees that we can't get specific locations on streets or on private property quite yet, I would like to see them deployed within our existing preserves, all of which are needing to be reseeded or replanted, and rather than just sitting somewhere in a nursery, let's get them in the ground before it gets too cold. And how many trees are there left from this past? There are a few hundred. Let's deploy them and get them in the ground.
Commissioner, we don't buy trees on speculation. So we find out how many spots we have to plant, and then we make our order for the trees. We make our bid award for the trees. So it's not like we got a big yard with trees sitting around and some go unused. It doesn't work that way.
Okay, good. If there are those that we need a place for, I would encourage us to use our existing preserves and go ahead and move in that direction.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner O'Neill. Anyone else? Okay. Then we are going to, I guess we've already closed the public hearing, so we are going to adjourn this meeting of the Board of Commissioners and move to our committee meeting, which is the Finance Committee. So I will recognize its chair, Commissioner Zoll.
Thank you. Items on the Finance Committee agenda, contract awards and some considering some Vitality Grant awards later in the meeting, and potential amendments to both our operating and capital budget. Why don't we start with number one, which is that we consider awarding a contract for design work at Schauffele Plaza and Lot 6. And to tell us more, Jillian Dirks from our Planning Department.
Hi, thank you so much. So staff is recommending that the board enter into a contract with Omnes as a landscape architect consultant for the Schauffele Plaza project identified in the 2023 CIP. Staff has provided a briefing with a background on the selection process. I'm happy to answer any questions about that process and what led to this recommendation.
Okay, Jillian, thank you. Do any members of the committee have any questions or comments on this item? Commissioner Stevenson.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Jillian, thank you for the work that you did leading this and other members of your department. I think that this is an important step forward to the work that we want to do and that we've been discussing a long time. And I just want to re-emphasize what I've said to you in a sidebar, but want to say it publicly about to make sure that as you know, there are several members of the community, both business and residents, who have concerns about how this impacts parking. And as we go through this process, that we ensure them that there will be opportunities for conversations about that, and so how we can, as we move forward, that those concerns are going to be embedded in these steps.
Of course. We are planning for a fairly lengthy public process to incorporate comments from the surrounding community, and we're aware of the complexities of this project, and one of the things that we really liked about this consultant was their willingness to work around some of those complexities and integrate the needs of the commercial district in the design.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your comments, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Other committee members with questions or comments on this item? President Sinai.
Thank you, Commissioner Zoff. And let me echo that I find this tremendously exciting. I think this is transformational. I think we spend a limited number of years on this board, on this side of the dais, and one hopes for opportunities to really create lasting investments in the township, like I expect this is going to be. And it's not just simply that it's a civic space in the heart of Ardmore that Ardmore needs. In the context of the master plan, it is a linchpin for the evolution and the activation of downtown Ardmore in a way that's really critical and provide for circulation. I think it'll be an absolutely transformational space. And I'm excited by the choice of consultants because I think you have a transformational consultant who will rise to that transformational charge. And I just want to confirm something because one of the issues that you raise is an issue of there being multiple objectives that we have to try and navigate, right? One of which is one of what I just articulated, which is like creating sort of a absolutely best civic space, and then the other is we also have establishments and parking and circulation that needs to be dealt with, and I think there's a line in here that I just want to ask you about, which was placing a strong emphasis on evaluating a consultant's willingness to integrate parking considerations into the design of the proposed civic space. And I've previously in this room said I think it's important that we pay attention to parking, right? And we make sure that parking is there for the continued vitality of the businesses that are in Ardmore. But it doesn't all necessarily need to be on this particular site because there's other places around it. And as long as we are being mindful and intentional of including it, that it doesn't have to be. I just want to make sure that's. I was worried that there's potential disconnect. I want to make sure that I don't want to. I personally would be dismayed if we ended up handicapping our civic space because we haven't found some other way to deal with the parking considerations. And I just maybe you could speak to where the consultant can you think the consultant can handle that.
So we think there's a lot of opportunities to address this. I mean, one advantage that this site has is the proximity to the existing parking garage. So there is opportunities to create a better visual connection to the parking garage, which we know can be better utilized. We also are looking at Cricket Terrace to create some better efficiency of parking along Cricket Terrace and see how that can be integrated into the design. But as Commissioner Stevenson said, there are a lot of people that are concerned about parking, so I do think we're looking at the whole picture, and we're trying to make sure that the design achieves as many objectives as possible. It creates a vibrant, activated public space. It identifies short-term parking where it can be integrated in a way that the design doesn't sacrifice.
Okay, so I look forward to following this. I think this particular space has the potential to create so much value in downtown Ardmore that I think we want to keep our eye on that prize as we go through the process. And thank you for taking this on. Thank you, Commissioner Zoff.
Okay. Other committee members with questions or comments? Okay. Yes, Commissioner Kramer, Commissioner Sean Kramer.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank the staff and the members of the selection committee for a great job. I'm excited about the choice. And I'm excited about the vision that you're articulating for Schauffele Plaza. So, great stuff.
Thank you. We're very excited too.
Do any members of the public in the room have any questions or comments on this item? Okay, seeing none. Jody, do we have any other public comment?
No one has their hand raised.
Okay. So I'll note that this contract that's proposed is not only for consulting on design, but is also for fully engineered documents, which will enable this to go to bid in a more rapid fashion than would typically occur, because it's typically two separate processes to do design and then separately to do engineering documents that, on which, contractors can bid. And so will you expect Jillian to be coming back to us with design, proposed design, and then we will discuss and then that then approve to what goes into engineering documents. So there's a not only for the public, but a commissioner step in between.
Of course, yes. There will be it'll be a completely public process where the design will be reviewed by the board as well.
Okay, I'll move that the Finance Committee recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval of the execution of a professional services contract in the amount of $95,225 with Omnis for design and engineering of a civic space at Schauffele Plaza in Ardmore. Do I have a second? Commissioner Courtney seconds. Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor, raise your hand. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Madam Secretary, that motion passes unanimously. Next item for the Finance Committee next agenda item for the Finance Committee to consider is awarding a contract for Community Development Block Grant Consulting. And for an explanation of that and what we will be considering, I'll ask Emily Crane, our Community Development Technician, to tell us more.
Thank you, Commissioner Zelov. Good evening, everybody. Staff is recommending in this case entering into a contract for HUD consulting with a company called Urban Design Ventures. Again, if you have any questions about the issue briefing, I'm happy to answer them. Or if you'd like a little more background, I could give you that as well.
Emily, could you take a moment to describe briefly the process that the staff used in arriving at this recommendation?
Sure. We received, well, first of all, we advertised for the RFP, and we individually sent 7 companies the RFP. We only received 2 proposals in return. We created a team of staff down in building and planning and with the manager's office, and we reviewed the proposals. We got together and discussed them and decided that both candidates were very experienced, very impressive, and we would move to interviewing both of the firms. So we had interviews with both teams. And like I said, they were both very good. They were both very experienced. But I would say the review team was very impressed with the way Urban Design Ventures talked about creating the reports that are due to HUD, not just putting the reports into the HUD computer, but also the way they would craft them so that they'd be more readable and understandable to the public when they're being reviewed. The team was also impressed with the way they talk about their public engagement. Moving forward next year, we're going to be doing a new 5-year plan for HUD. So there's going to be a lot of public engagement happening, and I think that all of the team thought that the way they talked about it, their proactive approach and the way they talk about moving into this engagement was impressive, and this is how the selection was made.
Okay, and we typically this consulting work is funded through our CDBG contract.
That's correct.
Okay. And what's proposed is a 3-year contract?
It's a 3-year, it's a 1-year contract that can be re-upped twice. So if we're unhappy, we can change it, but it will be probably a 3-year contract. Typically.
1 year with 2 options.
1 year with 2 years
option
to, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do committee members have any questions or comments? Seeing none. Do any members of the public have any questions or comments? Jody, are there any online who have any questions or comments?
No one online has their hand raised.
Okay. I will ask Commissioner O'Neill if she would like to make the motion.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Zelloff. I'd like to make a motion that we enter into Consider for recommendation to the Board of Commissioners approval to award a contract for Community Development Block Grant CDBG Technical Assistance Service Contract to Urban Design Services.
Is there a second? Commissioner McComb seconds. Okay, the motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor, raise your hand. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Madam Secretary, that motion and award of contract passes unanimously. Thank you, Emily. Next item on our agenda is for the committee to consider a resolution in which we would be awarding real estate tax credits to volunteer firefighters and members of Narberth Ambulance. And to tell us more, I'll call on our Chief Financial Officer, Eric Trout.
All right, thank you. So this is become a pretty regular standard year-end item, at least the last 5 or 6 years. So you have background information on this tax credit, which goes to volunteers who accumulate enough points for responding to calls, going to trainings, and other such things in your issue briefing. You also have a resolution which will be passed that contains the point system in terms of how those volunteer firefighters achieve those points and the necessary points. I think it's 115 that is necessary to qualify for the credit. Overall, you know, the cost of this credit increased the last 2 years once we were able and made a decision as a board and as a township to increase the actual percentage of the rebate. Originally, it was capped at 20%. It's now 100%. So the average rebate to the volunteers is around $870 this past year. We were able to get them processed for every single volunteer, so we're happy about that because it's a small cost to pay to try to help us preserve the volunteer, both fire and ambulance system across the township. And be happy to answer any other questions you might have.
Thank you, Eric. As you pointed out, this would be the third year in which we rebate 100% of township real estate taxes for the volunteers who own real estate and live in Lower Merion Township. We are doing so almost immediately after the state legislature enabled us to do so. Prior to this, we were maxed at the maximum we could award is 20%. And when the law changed, we immediately went to 100%. And it's, as Eric pointed out, it is the least we can do for our volunteer firefighters and those members of Narberth Ambulance, I think about half of them who are volunteers. So, are there committee members who have any questions or comments? Commissioner Churchill.
Just point of information, why do we have to vote on this every year?
I think that's
I'll refer
state
that
legislation.
to our CFO or our manager.
Unless Ernie tells me I'm wrong, I believe that's part of the enabling state legislation that the board has to pass that resolution every year.
It is, Commissioner. It's part of the state law that allowed us to do this. Each year, you have to adopt the criteria that will be covering the volunteers. So the Lower Merion Board of Directors of the Fire Department developed the criteria and the number of points required. But every year, you have to, once again, pass a resolution saying this is the criteria that will be applied.
Thank you.
Vice President Gavin.
So as Commissioner Bernheim's not here, and he has really spearheaded this effort and we owe him a great deal of gratitude for all the work he's done on this. One thing he said, and I'll echo it because I know he would say that if he were here, we only make up a small portion of the property tax. We're about 10%. The rest is made up about 12% from the county and 78% from the school district. The school district this year implemented a smaller portion as a rebate and encouraged them to continue looking at this as they move forward to increase that version and get them to 100% to recognize the great work of our volunteer firefighters. And hopefully they continue down that path and get to where we are in that recognition. So thank you.
Yes, I think the only thing in your comment that differs from Commissioner Bernheim is he would have had a puns in there somewhere.
Fair point.
Thank you. Other commissioners with questions or comments? Do any members of the public in the room have any questions or comments? Jody, are there any other questions or comments? Okay. I will move that the Finance Committee recommend to the Board of Commissioners that we adopt a resolution approving the 2024 criteria for the real estate tax credit for volunteer firefighters and volunteer emergency medical service personnel to qualify for the rebate of the 2023 township real estate taxes. Do I have a second? Commissioner O'Neill seconds. The motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor, raise your hand. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Madam Secretary, that motion passes unanimously. All right, item number 4 on our agenda is for the committee to consider wage increases for 2024 for the portion of our workforce that is non-union and non-police management. Police management will be the next item on our agenda. A large portion of our workforce is in the Workers Association, and their contract has is in place not only for this year but for next year. And another large portion of our workforce is in the FOP, our uniformed workforce, the members of our police department, and the same applies. Their contract and compensation is in place for 2023 and 2024. A smaller portion of our workforce does not have an employment contract and are not in the police department, and that's what's before us. To tell us more, I'll ask our manager to provide some background.
Certainly, Commissioner. Our non-union workforce consists of a variety of our management personnel, also some of our technical personnel and our professional personnel. They typically do not join the union. They're outside of the recognized unions. We have 2 unions, as you said. In 2023, we approved union contracts for both the Fraternal Order of Police and also the Workers Association. Both were 4-year contract settlements covering 23, 24, 25, and 26. The contracts call for a 3.5% wage increase for our union personnel in 2024. So this item, which has been a fairly standard practice of the board, is to spread that 3.5% increase to our non-union workforce as well. Be glad to answer any questions.
Do any committee members have any questions or comments on this item? Okay. Seeing none, do any members of the public in the room have any questions or comments? Jody, are there any other members of the public who wish to speak?
Yes, Ms. Seltzer has raised her hand. Panelists.
Ms. Seltzer, would you like to introduce yourself?
Oh, she's just coming.
Hi, Adrian Seltzer Winwood, and I just want to say Jody deserves.
We appreciate the brevity of your comments, Ms. Seltzer, and I was going to note and didn't, but I will note that what is before us tonight does not apply to either our township secretary or our township manager. They are both handled individually. Our township manager has an employment contract, and our township secretary is handled separately because she works for the 14 of us. And so we will be getting to that in due course. And so,
give her a bigger raise.
well, you get one bite at the apple, Ms. Seltzer. I will therefore recommend, I'll move that the Finance Committee recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval of a non-union wage increase of 3.5% for all non-uniform management and non-union employees to be incorporated into the adopted 2024 budget and effective January 1, 2024. Do I have a second? I do, from Commissioner Grimes. The motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor, raise your hand. Any opposed? Any objections? Madam Secretary, that motion passes unanimously. Okay, related but separate. we will consider police management. They are not members of the FOP and therefore not covered by that contract. And so, and they are considered separately from the non-union workforce that we've just spoken about and decided on, or at least made a recommendation on. So to provide more information, again, I'll ask our township manager to do so.
Basically, it's the exact same thing, except this applies to our 8 members of our police command staff. As Commissioner Zeloff said, that they are not included in the Fraternal Order of Police contract, so the board typically deals with this workforce separately. Again, you've just spread the 3.5% to the other non-union employees. This action would do the same for our police management personnel.
Do any committee members have any questions or comments? Do any members of the public in the room have any questions or comments? Jody, do any members of the public have any questions or comments online?
No one has their hand raised.
Okay. Therefore, I will move that the Finance Committee recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval of a wage increase of 3.5% for all police management employees to be incorporated into the adopted 2024 budget and therefore effective January 1, 2024. Do I have a second? I have a second from Commissioner McComb. Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor, raise your hand. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Madam Secretary, that motion passes unanimously. Okay, moving right along. We're on to agenda item 6 for this evening. And this is for the Finance Committee to consider making awards for the American Rescue Plan, which we will be calling for the rest of the evening ARP, under the Nonprofit Vitality Grant Program. You may recall that several months ago, the commissioners adopted a Vitality Grant Program that is a new initiative, a one-time initiative funded by the one-time money from the ARP funding that we received a significant amount of. And we've set up a system and program that Brandon Ford, our Assistant Township Manager, is going to explain, and we set aside up to $1.05 million for this program. And so we'll start with Brandon, who's going to explain where we left off in, I think, in July and where we are today.
Thank you, Commissioners. As Commissioner Zeloff explained, the board did set aside $1,050,000 this past July for the ARP Nonprofit Vitality Grant Program. The program was designed eligible for any local nonprofit to submit an application for, again, this one-time funding for any project that they had to consider that they would like the township to consider funding. The whole intent of the program was to promote the growth and sustainability, long-term sustainability, mind you, of local nonprofits. The application, applicants were able to submit any project in funding requests of a minimum of $10,000 up to a maximum of $100,000, with no single entity able to receive more than $100,000 regardless of how many applications they submitted. And we did have a couple applicants submit multiple applications. That application period opened this past July and closed in October. Over that course of time, we received a total of 49 applications across 42 different nonprofit organizations. And the grand total of all the different funding requests totaled a little bit over $3.1 million. Subsequently, in addition to establishing this program, the township did enter into a contract with Triad Associates to conduct the scoring of these applications. As part of the program, the board did create and approve a scoring rubric which was designed to rate each of the applications received by the township. Triad used that rubric and they scored each project. And the methodology in terms of how they scored it, Triad assigned 2 reviewers to each project. They were the same 2, so the same 2 reviewers reviewed all 49 projects. They each developed their own scores across the criteria contained in the rubric, and then each scoring was culminated. So each project received a culminated score between the 2 different reviewers. That list and the score were included as part of the public packet, so anyone who can access our website to see what each application scored based on the Triad scoring. And that scoring was then provided to the board for consideration in terms of which projects to fund. I will note that the way the program was designed, that the scoring was not a end-all be-all, that it was just one factor that the board could consider when considering all these different projects to fund.
Okay. Thank you, Brandon. I'll next ask our president, President Sinai, to explain the process that the board has gone through since the Triad review and work product was distributed, made available to the township about a few weeks ago when we received it.
Yeah, a couple weeks ago, perhaps. Thank you, Commissioner Zoff, and thank you, Brandon, and everyone who worked tremendously hard on this. There were a lot of proposals to sift through, and so here's what the basic idea was. So we had a committee earlier in the year to come up with a rubric that the board approved. And then we intentionally selected a external third party to score the applications against our predetermined rubric. So we would get really what a third party scoring would be. It reflected, hopefully the board's objectives, but not us doing the scoring, and that's the information that you have. And we reflected, we understood that a rubric that you do in advance does not necessarily generate outcomes that you thought it would. At the end, you didn't have a chance to test it. You just put it out into the world and hoped it worked. And so we're quite conscious to have it be an advisory scoring rather than a just mechanical. Here's what comes out of that score. So we got the information, and in 49 applications and 49 proposals is a lot to work through in a public meeting in the evening for 14 people sitting up here. And so Commissioner Zeloff, as the chair of the Finance Committee, Commissioner Sean Kramer, who is the head of the ad hoc ARP engagement committee that we had set up in order to engage with the community about what objectives should be incorporated in the ARP. And myself went through the applications as well to try and come up with at least a proposal which would either be an ending point, if not that, a starting point for board discussion. So I just want to talk a little bit about that because Commissioner Zoff in a bit I think is going to read through what that recommendation list that came from the 3 of us is. And so that our decisions were sort of guided by the rubric scores, and also whether the allocation was a use of funds that was consistent with the guidelines of the ARP program, which were pretty specific about what the federal intent was for the use of the funds. And so there are several guiding principles that we tried to follow. And so basically our recommendations were largely aligned with the scoring that we got back from Triad that uses the board's rubric. However, we found that the categories that were of the scoring that were given to Triad were ARP intent. We had some measures in there. Project viability and impact. We had some measures in there. In township priorities, we had some measures in there. And we found that the ARP intent section ended up being duplicative with a separate measure that Triad provided of really how well the project matched to the legislative guidelines from the ARP. And so when we ended up evaluating the list, we deviated from what the board's ex ante weights were, the one that we had originally done beforehand, before we actually got anything, and took the scores and reweighted them. So we downweighted the ARP intent to 20%, 30% of the weight was on project viability impact, 50% of the weight was on township priorities, because then we separately prioritized proposals that Triad deemed to be most in line with the ARP guidelines, the things that would be eligible for ARP funding under the ARP guidelines. And if a proposal was partially eligible, because the proposals often had multiple parts to it, we considered partially funding it. We paid attention to whether we thought the outcomes or results would be able to be documented to the satisfaction of the federal auditor, because the federal government comes and audits the outcomes and the uses of the ARP funds. And you want to be sure that whatever we do, while we were quite confident that all the potential recipients would be doing what they were saying, it wasn't just a matter of doing it, you have to be able to document it, right, for the auditor. We prioritized services to Lower Merion residents. Not all applicants were either Lower Merion entities or were serving Lower Merion residents. And if a proposal was serving a clientele that was both inside and outside the township, the three of us considered partially funding the proposal. We tried to avoid funding duplicative programs because there was overlap in the programs were, audiences the program were going to serve, or what services they were going to provide. And we also tried to, a bit take into account whether the applicant had already received funding from other township sources, because there are multiple pots of money, and some of these applications were eligible and had received funding from other sources. Because the ARP money expires, it sunsets if it's not used by a certain time, we prioritize entities that we had confidence could deploy the money within the window that we had. And beyond that, we were making judgments on the applications in keeping the proposed grants within the advertised range of $10,000 to $100,000 per entity. And I keep saying we, but really I need to at this point just say how much work Commissioners Kramer and Zeloff put into this, coming up with something that seemed palatable to a lot of people. I came in as well and also had my own views on this. And we came up with a list that the three of us felt comfortable with, and that's what we're going to propose to the board in just a moment. I think I got anything. Did I leave anything out?
I think you covered everything, President Sinai.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just to add, there were several rounds of review by Commissioner Kramer and I, and President Sinai joined a number of those rounds of review, and we had a lot of back and forth questions and answers with staff, primarily our Assistant Manager, Brandon Ford, who really helped once we got a tremendous volume of information from Triad, helped us with answer questions and work through a lot of information. And we had some very good summary sheets provided by Triad, and that we adapted to the approach that we took as President Sinai described. So I will note for those of you who have the finance agenda, the list of all the applicants and what they requested is in the agenda. And that, yes, in alphabetical order in the agenda. So with that, I'm going to make a motion for us to begin our consideration of proposed awards. So I'm going to move that the Finance Committee recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval to award $832,721 in American Rescue Plan funding to eligible projects submitted by nonprofit organizations to the Township's ARP Nonprofit Vitality Grant Program as follows. So now I'm going to name 21 applicants and the amounts. A Better Chance Lower Merion for house renovations and expansion, $100,000. Appleford, application 3 for handicap accessibility to gardens, $60,000. Ardmore Initiative, Application 1, replacement benches on Lancaster Avenue, $28,283. Episcopal Legal Aid for monthly legal aid clinics, $20,000. Families CCAN for a seniors village, $21,232. Family Matters for family strengthening program for at-risk families, $25,000. Friends of the Kinwood Heritage Trail for an EV vehicle, $26,357. Gladwin Fire Company for firefighter living quarters, $100,000. Harrison Association for a new website and donor software, $13,100. The JCC, a minibus for services to seniors, $50,000. Lower Merion Conservancy application number 1, a National Register listing for historic black churches, $20,000. Lower Merion Conservancy application number 3, expansion of the Green Streets program, $20,000. Meals on Wheels for operations, $25,000. Marion Square Scout House for air quality improvements, $40,000. Narberth Ambulance for EMS training scholarships, $21,250. Narberth Food Bank for operations, $32,500. Neighbors Helping Neighbors for operations, $25,000. Penguin Library for an outdoor reading garden, $50,000. Philadelphia Skating Club for facility repairs, $25,000. Riverbend for upgrades and programming, $80,000. And finally, Surrey Services for Seniors, programming for seniors, $50,000. The motion has been made. Is there a second? Commissioner Sean Kramer seconds. There is, and perhaps I should have said this before the motion was made and seconded, our township secretary does have the list that I just read. So any member of the public who's here who wishes to see the list, take the list, it's here. I think, Brandon, you've just pointed to it. It's on the table. It's available to the public. And, of course, Jody, it's available to anybody who is listening who requests it.
Correct.
So, okay. So the motion's been made and seconded. What I'd like to do is start with public comment. Are there any members of the public here in the room who would like to make any comments or have any questions? Yes, ma'am. And please introduce yourself and tell us roughly where you live.
I am Scarlett Romano, and it's 721 Woodfield Road in Villanova. I'm here on behalf of Flying Change Foundation Incorporated. We did apply for the ARP finance. And I don't know if there's any opportunity for reconsideration. I noticed that you have not awarded all of the monies, so maybe we could maybe answer any additional questions you might have that were not answered on our grant application. Tell you a little bit about myself. Professionally, I'm trained as an epidemiologist, so working in public health for a lifetime for the last 30 years, doing program development and execution. So this program is developed from my professional expertise, but also from my personal. I'm a lifelong equestrian, so I have had opportunity to see in real time difference equine assisted learning can make in the lives of at-risk youth. I feel like our grant application was very much in line with this source of this type of funding, given the increase in at-risk youth following the global pandemic. Many of the categories of children who are now listed as at risk have increased exponentially, some of them as much as threefold in these categories. Yet we lack programming, we lack resources for these kids. research tells us, and when we look at the data, and as an epidemiologist, I look at the data, it looks like some of these impacts could be lifelong. So this is an opportunity for us to make an intervention with also proven data that this type of intervention works. The program that we're recommending would follow the Professional Association of Therapeutic Horsemen, so certified path training, a path certified program that would support at-risk youth in Lower Merion and make a real difference. This would be an investment in our youth. No other type of programming like this exists in Lower Merion or is available to our Lower Merion residents. So I'd respectfully ask the Board of Commissioners to please consider this program. It's unique, it's different. We have data that it's effective and will work. The program is represented by professionals, epidemiologists, other professionals, physicians, like my husband who is here with us today, equine professionals, and we would use this funding to continue the work that we've already started. We've developed a strong business plan. We shared it with you within our grant. The funding that we would ask for would help us to build out this program and make sure that we can execute it and provide this service to the children of Lower Merion area.
Thank you, Ms. Romano.
Thank you.
Are there any other members of the public who have any questions or comments? No one? Seeing none, Jody, are there any members of the public who are online who wish to speak?
Yes, Ms. Seltzer has her hand raised, and I'll promote her to the panelist.
Thank you. Yes, Ms. Seltzer.
Okay, it takes a second for the thing to go through, so
Sure.
thank you for your patience. I have been following food insecurity in the area for a while, and I'm kind of shocked that benches and things like that get more than the food programs, or don't get more, but get money when there is such a need. The amount of people coming into the food banks has doubled this year. And I really think that there should be more money going to the food banks rather than stuff that just looks pretty. Yes, it's nice if they have new benches or whatever, but a bench doesn't do any good if you're hungry. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Seltzer.
Oh, and I'd like that list, please, Jody. Thank you.
Jody, are there any other members of the public who?
No, no one else has their hand raised.
Okay. Yes, ma'am. If you would like to speak, please come forward to the podium and introduce yourself.
I'm Sue Endy, 1501 Surrey Lane in Wynwood. I've lived in my house for 47 years. My good friend and neighbor.
Bonnie Asher. I live on Westwood Lane. I've been in that house for 20 years.
We are two of the volunteers that have been working on this Family Scan proposal. We're grateful for the consideration. We wish we could get some more. But we think that our work as volunteers in the community to try and create programs that bring community members closer together, knowing each other and having more reciprocal activities together is a really worthwhile endeavor. There's a national network with Village to Village, there are websites, and we hope that with 1/3 of what we requested, we can still work on some of the issues of creating this network within the neighborhood.
I want to second what I think her name was Miss Silver spoke about, that a lot of money going for making things look nice, and there's a real need in our neighborhoods, not only for food, but also we just have a large number of seniors, depending on the neighborhood, ranging from 20 to 25% of the population is 65 and over.
and helping people stay in their homes for a long period of time is a worthwhile financial endeavor as well as a social project.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you both. Are there any other members of the public who wish to come forward? Okay. Seeing none, it's now our turn as members of the Finance Committee. Do committee members have any questions or comments or response to public comment? Commissioner Gilda-Kramer.
Thank you. I too have been working very extensively on the issue of food insecurity in this township for 4 years now, including during the first 2 years of the pandemic, when the food insecurity issue exploded, and it has now increased again this year. We have 13% of our public school students are eligible for free or reduced meal plans. And 4 years ago, when we had a conservative estimate that I worked up with the help of former Commissioner Valar-Couche, that we had at least 5,000 residents who were food insecure. This is not a small problem, and it's one that affects our seniors significantly. During those first 2 years when I chaired the Health Committee and was working with all of our food pantries, ElderNet was on the front lines of dealing with the crises of people who were food insecure and who were suffering due to the isolation of the pandemic. And ElderNet rose to the occasion and helped take care of our residents. They had an active food pantry and helped get people to their medical appointments and helped check in on the seniors to help alleviate some of the severe isolation that was a particular problem during those first couple of years. If ElderNet now needs assistance with fundraising and stabilizing its sources of grants with some help from us, I think that we should recognize their extraordinary service over many years to this community and help them. Their project was ranked number 13 on our rubric, higher than many others that have been proposed for funding, like improvements to a skate club that has almost nothing to do with COVID and doesn't serve the needs of people who were so heavily impacted by the pandemic, like our seniors. We are proposing $50,000 to Surrey Services for Seniors, which was ranked 31 on our rubric instead of 13 on our rubric, which has no real history of serving our residents, and we're proposing to give them $50,000 to provide similar services. And I think that we should be providing the same support to ElderNet, which for years has supported this community. And so therefore, I am going to move to amend our allocation to include $50,000 for ElderNet.
A motion has been made. Is there a second? Okay. Commissioner Kramer, that motion fails for lack of a second. Other commissioner questions or comments on the list? Commissioner Sean Kramer.
Thank you. I'd just like to clarify the difficulty of this task and the thought that went into to making these allocations, and they are they're often not the amount that different organizations have asked for, or the full amount, and those are difficult decisions to make. In general, I just want folks to know that these decisions were made not based on the worthiness of the program. Every program that received dollars from us, we thought was something that was adding to the community, and they are. There are a lot of other factors that go into the relative percentage of the allocations, including, there are a number of, as President Sinai described earlier. So I just want everybody to understand that the programs are worthwhile. We do understand that all of these are issues that face our community, and the decisions made were complex and relied on a number of factors. Thank you.
Okay. President Sinai.
Thank you, Commissioner Zell. I just want to respond to Commissioner Kramer's statement because, I fear she has, I don't want her to have given the impression that this board does not support Adjournment and has not been cognizant of food insecurity. A little later tonight, we are going to be dealing with a proposed allocation of $24,000 for Adjournment. Earlier this year, we allocated money from the CDBG program for Adjournment. Earlier this year, we forgave $30,000 in debt for Adjournment. Adjournment is a very valuable member of this community that this board continually supports. In the proposal that was in this ARP was not for food insecurity, it was for fundraising. We have consistently supported them for issues for supporting seniors. I'll also note that there are a number of items here that support food for various constituencies, including for seniors. That includes increased monies for Meals on Wheels. Includes part of the Neighbors Helping Neighbors application. It includes an Arbor Food Bank. I think there's another one here. So it is an issue that we are very cognizant of. However, the ARP legislation had a number of categories in which it had its priorities, not just food insecurity. And I think, at least for myself, I was very aware that there are multiple needs in this township, and there are multiple areas that warrant support. And there are some entities that this township has demonstrated over many, many years, and we recognize certain agencies are valued members of this community, and we support them in multiple ways. Thank you.
Thank you. Other committee members with questions or comments? Commissioner Stevenson.
Mr. Chairman, if my fellow commissioners would allow me to recognize Commissioner Sean Kramer. I need to make it public now that she took over as chair of this ad hoc committee because I just didn't have the fight in with me for Commissioner Zoloff. She was willing to take him on, but I think that she is. I just wanted to say, Sean, thank you, because I know it was a lot of time. I know, Scott, thank you as well, but I think that I just wanted to acknowledge that you willingness on that. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioners. There's no doubt that Commissioner Sean Kramer's dedication and time and objective review of what is before us with great care has been so valuable for this committee and this board, as has that of President Sinai. And so thank you for recognizing her, Commissioner Stevenson. Other committee members with questions or comments? Vice President Gafford.
Great, thank you, Commissioner Zoloff. I just want to quickly thank those who came tonight and spoke about their organizations, not only for coming and speaking, but also for all of the work you're doing. As President Sinai said, this wasn't a kind of a decision based on the merit of the program, solely on the merit of the programs. There are a lot of factors that went into the decision making. I know our assistant manager, Brandon Ford, did a lot of work and is able to answer any questions. And we're not going to go into here the details on every single program, but certainly I'm going to allow you to, Brandon. No, but seriously, make you available if you have questions, if you have concerns. As President Sinai also said, this is not the only way that we support programs through the years as programs grow, as programs change. There are a number of different initiatives, and we hope that you continue the great work serving our Lower Merion residents, and certainly stay involved with the township and find opportunities, work with staff to find opportunities to continue looking for funding that can help support these very worthwhile programs. So, thank you.
Thank you very much for mentioning that and saying that, Vice President Garvin. I think that's very helpful, and our Assistant Township Manager is available not only tonight, but in the days ahead to answer questions, to provide the information from Triad that we have paid for that was very advisory, as our President pointed out, in our selection, in the recommendations that are before us this evening. Brandon, yes.
Commissioner Zeloff, as Commissioner Gabbard and yourself said, I will be reaching out to the entities that are selected between now and when this list is confirmed by the full board at the December board meeting to notify them of their selection by this board, regardless of what the list looks like. But for those entities that aren't selected, they can also reach out to me to learn a little bit as to some of the factors that were considered. I would also like to, for those that are awarded funds that are listening and watching this video, just please don't go, this is not a green light to go spending money, right? You're going to have to enter into, subrecipient agreements with the township, and if you spend money before you sign on that dotted line, we can't guarantee that money. So, I will be contacting those that are selected tomorrow and Friday to kind of explain that. So don't, just hold the checkbook, don't spend money yet. So please wait until you hear from me.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Brandon. These are not reimbursable grants.
Yes,
Right.
that is
The
true.
work can't commence until the final decision in 2 weeks. And the
Absolutely.
agreements that you've just described. Okay. Any other comments or questions from committee members? Okay. The motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor, raise your hand. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Madam Secretary, that vote passes unanimously. All right, committee members, we have but one agenda item left on tonight's Finance Committee. It is for us to consider making amendments to our operating budget and our capital improvement plan budget. As we all know from the presentations, the public hearings, our staff has been working on both budgets since the summer. The budgets were released earlier this month. They're available online. They're available in our libraries. There's a lot of information. Commissioners have gone through them, and once the staff provides the budget to us, which was just about 4 weeks ago, it is now our budget, and we can amend it if we choose. And that process is what's before us on this final agenda item. There have been a number of amendments, proposed amendments, that have been submitted in advance and are in our agenda, and then once we get through that list, other amendments can be made, and then we will have a final vote on our budget in 2 weeks, on the 13th of December, our final meeting of the year, and the budgets can be amended up until they are approved. It's better to do so in advance, which is what why it's on our agenda for this evening. And so to provide some additional background, our Chief Financial Officer is with us again. Eric?
Yeah, so just really briefly, you have the issue briefing before you. So basically, these aren't in any particular order. They're basically in the order in which we received them from a commissioner. We tried to put them in language that is understandable, and hopefully, the board understands each of the amendments before it. The vast majority have to do with the capital budget, what's in the capital improvement plan book here. We also do have if you're looking at your issue briefing, the budget amendments number 5, 6, 7, and 8 are kind of staff recommended amendments, and those are explained as to why. And as we go through those, if there's additional information or anything that's necessary, I can provide, or the manager could provide, additional color on those items. But it's up to the board how you want to proceed. If you just want to go through the list, and we can talk about each one. And if there's any questions, hopefully give the board the proper information they need to make the most informed decision about the township's budget.
Okay, Eric, thank you. I think what we'll do is, our agenda has, as I said, 8 items on it, and so I think I will ask the proposer of each amendment to explain what they propose, and if they'd like to make a motion, we'll do each item individually as a separate motion for the committee to consider. And then final votes on amendments will be in 2 weeks, since these are committee votes. So the first item is a proposed budget amendment from Commissioner Gilda Kramer. So Commissioner Kramer?
Yes, I have proposed that job number 4024, the Marianne Kinwood streetscape improvements, be moved forward by 1 year. It is currently in the CIP for $100,000 in 2025, with the implementation for the remainder of this project in 2026. And I am proposing that we accelerate that project by 1 year. The reason for this is that we have started the improvements already to this district. There was a project that was almost completed. It's in the process of being completed right now. And frankly, for the last year or two, I have been hearing almost nonstop about issues with pedestrian crossing issues, where we've been seeing, we have a business district that is divided by Montgomery Avenue, with one half on one side and one half on the other side, and crossings at either end of it and one in the middle, and that's it. So it damages the business district. We're seeing some increased vacancies in the business district right now. And I think that from an economic development standpoint, as well as a pedestrian safety standpoint, it's really important for us to turn to these issues and start to address them sooner rather than later. We know it needs to be done. We have a very significant walking population in the community. There's a large Orthodox Jewish population that walks everywhere much of the time. And I think that we really need to address the needs of this business district, as well as the pedestrian safety issues. And that's why I'm requesting, and I'm moving that we advance this project by 1 year.
Okay, a motion has been made. Is there a second, President Sinai? Seconding? Okay. Motion's been made and seconded, so discussion. President Sinai.
So Ward 12 is on the other side of the street from Commissioner Kramer here, and I too have received many emails about the difficulty in walking through there, and I too have observed that this is a downtown area that needs attention from the township. And I think we've recognized for a long time that it needs attention from the township. Back in 2016, there was a report that also said we needed additional crossing at various places in Montgomery Avenue. Looked at things like curb bump outs and other improvements. That was 8 years ago. It is long past due for this to stop being in the out years of the CIP, from my perspective. I think the concern I have, I seconded it, but I think the concern I have, the question I have, is that we already have staff working on two downtown areas. We have them working on Ardmore. We have them working on Bala Avenue. I would like to get this in the queue right behind those two. And then the question is whether that is 2024 or 2025. And I guess I need to ask the township manager, like what staff capacity is, or what the ability. Like, can we do all three in 2024? Do I have to? Yeah.
The reality is the building and planning department has a lot on their plate already with the studies they already have to conduct and are already budgeted for 2024. So I think their role would be difficult to be added onto their plate in this study for their piece of it. Yeah, I think it would be just very difficult for them to get a lot of progress done on this when they're doing Ardmore, they're doing Schauffele Plaza, they're doing Bala Avenue, and adding another one is probably beyond their capability in 2024.
Okay. All right. So it doesn't make it any less important. I think I'm going to turn back to Commissioner Kramer whether we'd be okay putting it right behind these in the queue.
I would be okay with that as long as we're looking at the Bala Avenue issues, that we start to look at these in conjunction with the Bala Avenue issues, because this business district, moves right up to Bala Avenue. And I think that there is some sense in starting to at least conceptually look at these issues in tandem. And to the extent that we can start to do that in 2024, I think that that's really important. And then we'd have a firm commitment that this would actually be done in the next year after that.
Okay. So thank you. I'm going to leave my preference to be for 2025, though I agree with Commissioner Kramer about looking at these together, simply because I don't want partial attention paid to this. I think I want staff's full attention to pay to go to this when it's time. But that's it. Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Todd.
Commissioner McComb?
Yeah, I agree with President Sinai. If it can go in the queue, and if staff finds that because they're super efficient people, that we know them to be, that if they find time to start that, I would like that earmark to start as soon as possible, because I agree with Commissioner Kramer and Commissioner Sinai. It's an area that desperately needs some attention, and it is related sort of geographically and otherwise to the Bala Avenue issue. So, thank you.
Okay.
In that case, I will withdraw my amendment on the understanding that it's in the queue.
Okay. The motion's been withdrawn. I think the understanding has been extremely well communicated and will be recorded in the minutes. And our manager's here. So, all right. Let us move on to proposed budget. The second proposed budget amendment, Commissioner Gilda Kramer, that has also been requested by you.
Yes, this is a project that has been in the budget in the CIP many times and keeps getting pushed off. Again, this is one that borders both my ward as well as President Sinai's ward. This is an intersection where there have been accidents. It's a difficult intersection. It's one that should be addressed. We've known for years that it should be addressed. It's been in the plan for this coming year, I believe in the past, and it's been put off again. And I'm moving that we restore it to have it actually done in 2024 instead of pushing it out. Once again, this is the Marion Brookway Montgomery project.
Commissioner Kramer, would you like to make a motion?
Yes, I said I'm moving to put it in for 2024. This
Okay.
project.
Motion's been made. President Sinai seconds. I just want to make sure that is the motion clear to our manager? Okay. Motion's been made and seconded. Are there any questions or comments, President Sinai?
Okay, thank you. I enthusiastically support doing this in 2024. So this has unfortunately been also on my radar for a while. I think all of us claim to have the worst intersection in the township. But I used to live on this street, and I moved to a different street, and it wasn't completely because of this intersection, but it certainly played into it. This is where Bowman Avenue and Brookway come together with the V, and the point of the V hits Montgomery. And if you're walking down the sidewalk of Montgomery Avenue, you need to cross 2 streets connected, so a double wide street going into Montgomery with blind corners on both sides, and cars come around, they hit pedestrians, they hit other cars. It's been a disaster forever. So much of a disaster that when I moved into my house on Bowman 26 years ago, the previous owners, in the note that they left for us, told us not to exit the street on that side. That's how bad it was. So it would be good to get this done finally. It appears that we have some engineering drawings that are worked up, and all that remains is to evaluate the consequences of those engineering drawings and then install them. And so I see no reason for us to not be able to do this in 2024, and I hope our colleagues support us in moving this forward.
Other commissioner comments? Commissioner Churchill.
Yes, and I would just direct this to our manager. Would public work, is this a job for public works or building and planning?
Well, the design would be by our township engineer, and then assuming what solution was selected, the construction would be bid out as a project with a private contractor.
Okay, so is this our engineer's plate too full to address this? He's not here.
As President Sanai said, some of the work was done on this a couple years ago, so they began looking at this intersection and looking at solutions. I think they just have to go back to it. I think there'll have to be some public engagement in the process, because probably the selected solution may actually close off one of these streets for access.
There goes 2024.
I think our engineers can get to it in 2024.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Other commissioners? Commissioner Grimes.
Just a question for manager, and I forgive me putting you on the spot, but so this was originally in the budget for 2025. Is there a reason why it was for not for next year?
It's just like many projects that sit in the CIP for a number of years, and if there hasn't been any activity, they just slide out again until some board member says, "Let's make it a priority."
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
Okay. Other commissioners with comments? Okay. Any public comment on this item? All right, Jody. Okay, motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor, raise your hand. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, Madam Secretary, that motion carries unanimously. All right, the third proposed budget amendment is also made by Commissioner Gilda Kramer.
This is related to an effort that I made a couple of years ago to have the friable exposed asbestos on the 3rd floor of the Bryn Mawr Community Center remediated. I went on a tour of the Bryn Mawr Community Center as in my capacity as chair of the Township Properties and Open Space Committee, and I have known that for many years there has been collapsed asbestos plaster with loose asbestos up on the 3rd floor of the Bryn Mawr Community Center. When I went over there with a township staff member, I said, well, is this secured and sealed? And he said, oh, let me go up and look. And he opened up the door and he said, no. Anybody could go walk in there and be exposed to friable asbestos, which I don't think I think it's pretty much common knowledge that one asbestos fiber can cause mesothelioma, and which is invariably fatal. We have adopted a health in all policies policy. This is a health issue. It's a safety issue. It's one that I've been talking about for a couple of years, and I think that it's high time, since we'd never received an assurance from our engineer that it would be safe to leave it there, which we had requested, and our engineer was not able to certify that this would be safe to leave it there, that it's just high time we remediated it. It doesn't mean that we have to renovate the third floor or figure out exactly what we're going to do with it. I'm just moving that we include $360,000 for the asbestos remediation project, which will make the Bryn Mawr Community Center safer for our residents who use it, for ElderNet that uses the building, and for people who come in to use ElderNet services.
Commissioner Kramer, do you have a motion?
I did make a motion. I said I am moving to include $360,000 for capital project 4025 facilities improvement for asbestos remediation on the third floor of the Bryn Mawr Community Center.
Okay. A motion's been made. Is there a second? Okay. That motion fails for lack of a second. We'll move on then to proposed budget amendment number 4 from Commissioner Sean Kramer.
Thank you, Commissioner Zoll. I would like to withdraw this amendment or not propose this amendment at this time, and then can I make a replacement amendment? I have a different amendment I'd like to make on a different topic. Would you like for me to save that?
If it's a different topic, I think we'll
save that.
We'll pick that up when we go through the list. As it sounds like it's a new topic, so it's a new amendment.
Yes.
New proposal. Okay.
Yes.
Let's do it at that time.
Just like to say that I look forward to a robust conversation about wages when it comes time to discuss the results of the compensation study next year.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Then item 5 is a staff recommended budget amendment. And so I will call on our manager.
This one, Commissioners, is simply a budget amendment. When the budget was drafted, we did not have the Schauffele Plaza consulting proposals in. This simply adjusts the budget to reflect the fact that we now know what the price is for the design services for Schauffele Plaza, and we also know that we didn't get it started already in 2023, so most of the cost is being shifted to 2024.
Okay. Are there any questions or comments before we have a motion made? Are there questions or comments on this item? Commissioner Courtney, would you like to make a motion?
I would. Thank you, Commissioner Zoll. And I didn't speak to Schauffele Plaza earlier, but I did want to echo some of the sentiments that I'm very excited to see this moving forward, that we will be working with a great design group. And in particular, I agree with President Sinai that we should be exploring all of the parking that is available in Ardmore as part of this project. So I move that we recommend to the board to amend the budget to revise capital project 4072 Schauffele Plaza to eliminate the $30,000 estimated actual in 2023 and to increase the capital budget by $6,000 in 2024 to a total of $96,000 for the professional services contract that we awarded or recommended awarding earlier tonight. And one final comment, I think it's great that it came in under what we expected.
Okay, a motion has been made. Is there a second?
A second.
Commissioner Sean Kramer seconds. Okay, is there any commissioner question or comment now that the motion's been made? Is there any public comment on this item? In the room, Jody, online? Okay, a motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor, raise your hand. Any opposed? Madam Secretary, that motion passes unanimously. All right, we have another staff recommended budget amendment, and I will call on our township manager once again.
This is a late capital project that we learned of for the Marion Fire Company. The fire company has a leak in the roof. One of the responsibilities of the township with respect to our fire company facilities has been to maintain them, to do the capital maintenance and improvements on our firehouses, and this one has a pretty bad leak. The roof is reaching, it's close to its useful life, and so this would add additional funds in 2024 to replace the roof on the Marion Fire Company.
Thank you, Ernie. I will move that the Finance Committee recommend to the Board to amend the proposed 2024 budget to allocate an additional $45,000 in the 2024 capital budget for capital project 4405, Fire Company's facility project, to fund roof replacement at the Marion Fire Company of Ardmore. Do I have a second? Commissioner McComb seconds. Okay, a motion has been made and seconded. Committee members with questions or comments? Any members of the public with any questions or comments? Madam Secretary. Okay, motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor, raise your hand. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, Madam Secretary, that motion carries unanimously. Our seventh proposed budget amendment is also recommended by staff, and I will ask our manager once again to explain this item.
So, Commissioners, as you know, we're working on a project to build an additional 48 units of senior housing at Ardmore House. And as we go through this process, we have begun to refine our cost estimates, and our project team has come to a point where we pretty much know where the cost estimates are at this point in time. And so what this modification does, we already had $3.7 million in the CIP, but it also anticipated we were going to get started sooner than we're really going to get started. And there's actually a greater need for more financing over the period of time that this project will take. So this modifies it so that we will actually show in the CIP over multiple years a total of $7.5 million for the Ardmore House expansion project, with most of that cost coming in 25 and 26, because as you know, we're going after tax credits for the project to fund the biggest portion of it. We won't know until mid-24 whether we're awarded those tax credits by the Pennsylvania Housing Finance Agency. So the schedule has slipped out a little further, and the total funding need has grown. Of course, these estimates will be refined further as we go forward with the project, and also we are continuing to seek additional grant dollars to help fund this $7.5 million over the 25-26 period. So we have made an additional approach to Montgomery County to their grant program, and we'll continue to seek any and all sources to close that gap. But our biggest need right now is to make sure that our capital budget shows over this period of time that the project is fully funded, and that knowledge will go in with the grant application on January 11th to the Pennsylvania Housing Finance Agency. So that is what this amendment accomplishes. Be glad to answer any questions.
Questions or comments for our manager on this item? Commissioner Churchill.
Thank you. Several years ago, we set aside $1 million for affordable housing. Could this project qualify for that?
Absolutely, Commissioner. As a matter of fact, part of closing this budget gap here would be anticipated that we would use, we actually are close to $1.5 million in the affordable housing fund right now, and we would anticipate using most of that fund to help fund this budget gap in the project.
Great. Thank you.
Other commissioners, committee members with questions or comments? Do any members of the public in the room have any questions or comments? Any online?
Yes, Ms. Seltzer has her hand raised. I'll be over to a balance.
Okay. Yes, Ms. Seltzer.
That's Dan.
Hello, Adrian Seltzer, Winwood. I would like to say that I'm pleased to hear that this project when I first heard about it, was for 30 units, and it's now 48. The cost is even lower than the original estimate. So yay, team, and thank you very much.
Any other members of the public? Okay. Commissioner Stevenson, would you like to make a motion?
Yes, I would like to make the motion that we consider for recommendation to the board to amend the proposed 2024 budget to reduce the capital budget for engineering by $600,000 to $100,000 and to allocate an additional $3,700,000 for the construction funding by the township in the 2026 capital plan for the capital project 4097 affordable housing in order to fully fund the total $7.5 million Ardmore House expansion over the 2024-2026 years.
Motion's been made. Is there a second? Commissioner Sean Kramer seconds. My comment on this is that, in reaction to public comment, the cost estimate is actually up, not down, which has led to a need for additional funding sources. I don't believe we should be committing this level of township funds to this project. I know that our management team is seeking other sources, and they're keeping us informed on that, and that's vital. But this level of township funding for the gap that exists for me is too much. So with that, are there any other comments or questions?
Just point of information, didn't they already receive a grant, like $3 million or 1.5 or something?
Yes, a part of this is, includes the $3 million grant from Montgomery County,
Okay.
Their ARP funds. So yes, $3 million has already been awarded as a part of this project.
And we're putting in 1.5 million from our affordable housing, so that's 4.5 million. So this is the additional 3.7 that would be.
So we're basically saying between now and when the project would go to construction, we need to find that difference, whether from township funds or other grant funds.
So we're underwriting it with the idea that other funds will be available, hopefully.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I think that's a good description of the current state of a $20+ million proposed project. Okay, the motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor, raise your hand. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, Madam Secretary, that motion passes, but not unanimously. I didn't see what the count is.
It was 12 to 2.
12 to 2. Okay, thank you. Okay. There is a staff recommended budget amendment number 8 on our agenda, but I don't know that we need the staff to explain this one. In our operating budget, we have for some time we've included requests, we've included funding for nonprofit organizations in our township. Many have been in our budget for many years. We have a very clear and defined process for nonprofits who, how they would apply, the information they have to provide, and it's a project that gets a process that gets started over the summer. And so in the 2024 budget currently is the same total amount that was in the 2023 budget. As has been our recent past practice, the Finance Committee has reviewed all the applications, and I should back up one step. Our Finance Department receives the applications, ensures that they're complete in meeting the requirements that have been established, and then provides them to the Finance Committee officers, which consists of Commissioners Whalen, Courtney, and myself, and then we meet along with staff to review them and to make recommendations. Somewhat along the lines, or very similar to the lines of what we discussed earlier tonight, we have taken the approach that a committee working through the details and coming up with a recommendation for the Finance Committee and the Board of Commissioners to consider is very productive, and we have worked hard the three of us worked hard to go through this in what turned out to be quite a long meeting a few weeks ago. You see on the last page of our agenda tonight, the Township Funding Requests 2024. The actual from 2023 in the 2023 budget was $106,000. What was requested in 2024 from existing organizations plus 2 new organizations is $161,000. What the Finance Committee officers are recommending is $136,500. That's a $30,500 increase over the 2023 budget. And so with that preamble, I'll ask Commissioner Courtney if he'd like to make a motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Zilloff. I would, and just to sort of pick up where you left off there, I want to thank the staff members who were present for that meeting and sat through its duration while the three of us worked this out. I think if you look at the allocations and if you asked any of the three of us individually, you might get preferences for higher or lower numbers on the individual items. And so I once again, this is a testament to compromise and the great work that the three of us do when we lock ourselves in a room. And I would also just like to say the reason that we are making a budget amendment, as Commissioner Zella pointed out, is because we decided to allocate more money to nonprofits this year. As a township, we had a great windfall. We projected a deficit and ended up with a surplus. We also have a very strong general fund balance, well above our policy goal. And so I hope as a committee you will agree with me that we can add this additional $30,000. So I move that we recommend to the Board of Commissioners to amend the proposed 2024 budget to increase the general fund non-departmental budget by $30,500 and allocate funds to certain nonprofit organizations in accordance with the Finance Committee's recommended funding levels that you see in your memos.
Motion's been made. Is there a second? Commissioner Whalen seconds.
And I would just say that I not only wholly support the motion, but also all the comments that Commissioner Courtney made and that you yourself made, Commissioner Zoloff. I think this was an extreme example of the beautiful compromise of where we got to. And I think this is the process at work, and I hope everyone can see fit to support us.
I would say that we were probably all a little bit unhappy. And so this is the result. And so we did spend the time necessary. We didn't end the meeting until we reached an agreement. And so that took a little longer than it did previously, but that is the process that our president has established, and we made it work. And so are there questions or comments from committee members? Commissioner Grimes.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Zeloff. So I just want to comment on one of these, but I am not going to suggest any sort of amendment. I am concerned by the proposed reduction in spending for Community Watch, particularly because in the western part of the township there has been an increase in burglaries in recent months. Because I respect the process that the committee goes through, I am going to assume that there was consideration of the need for continuing efforts to increase the frequency of Community Watch throughout the township, and that this our ability to foster, the participation of more people who want to do community watch. So, no amendments, I just wanted to make that observation. Thank you.
Yes, Commissioner Grimes, thank you very much for that observation. I'll take a first response at that, and other commissioners can do so as well. And we spent a great deal of time on this item. The proposal from Community Watch said their operations are suspended. And so we would like to see Community Watch be a functioning, valuable organization. And we look forward to a year from now, as they go through and better understand our process, submitting the necessary information for a organization that, with a reasonable 2025 budget that makes sense, so that can be something that is active in this community, which I think we would all like to see.
Thank you.
Any other commissioners with any questions or comments? Commissioner O'Neill.
Oh, thank you very much. And thank you for the list. Happy to support an increase to our nonprofit sector. It's a vibrant organizational setup that we must continue to support in the township. What I would like to see more of, and I have brought this up in years past through the grants committee, is especially now in comparison to how we've handled the ARP funding and how incredibly transparent and open that entire process was. The process that we used to get to these 14, I'm not quite sure how it works after 8 years, and I'm not so sure that's healthy. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with the allocation as they've been made, and we're hopefully about to pass. But I would like to see more about how do they actually find out about these things. Yes, maybe they'll know to look a certain place, but what if you don't know to look at a certain website, or we don't know? They don't know. I love that there are additional newcomers to the ARP Awards that actually made the list, which is fabulous. We have over 400 nonprofits in the township, so where are they? And I think shedding light on the fact that these are competitive, needed programs and the funds are available is a terrific win. So my only criticism is process that maybe we need to know more about in the future. But I'm super happy about it this evening, so thank you.
Okay. Let's go with President Simon.
Okay, so thank you, Commissioner Gonzalez. So let me thank the members of the Finance Committee for going through this, so this board does not have to in this meeting, which is really we have asked a lot of them with that, and they have delivered, and I am grateful. Because it was a bit of a crazy idea and it could have really not worked, and you guys have made it work, and that's a testament to all of you. I like Commissioner Grimes you had noticed the decline in allocation to Lower Merion Community Watch, but I, like Commissioner Grimes, I'm also not going to second guess the work of this committee. But I did take some time to talk to them and understand a little bit about the decision. And I was concerned because we have had a spate of burglaries, right? And anything we can do to reduce it is important. And I'm just going to take one clarification with what Commissioner Zeloff said. Lower Merion Community Watch is not suspended, right? They have not suspended operations. They are operating. I'm pretty sure you could not have told that from their application, right? Now that's the issue that they had. What is it that they're doing? There are Lower Merion Community Watch signs through the township. There are 100 of those. They are placed there by Community Watch. They are maintained. They're replaced. They hold dog walker watch training sessions every year. They recruit people for dog walker watch and get them to the training session to keep track of them. They provide incentives for people to come. They provide membership information and paraphernalia. And they provide insurance, not just for the officers, but for the people who are walking around and can be perceived to be part of Lower Merion Community Watch. So that's what they do, and they're continuing. And The dog watcher watch is there in the communities, trained to look for things that are out of the ordinary, to call the police. And hopefully more people will join in and participate in that, because the more eyes that we have in the street, the better. And there is no one better to figure out that's different on your neighborhood than the people who walk there every day with their dogs, right? And see it. They just need to be trained for what to look for, so they can reach out to the police if something looks awry, to have it investigated. Having said that, it is what we demand of all applicants for township funds is documentation and a fulsome application. And so while I appreciate the efforts of the Lower Merion Community Watch, and I look forward to them thriving in the township, I too look forward to getting them back to the $3,000 of funding that they had in 2022, getting them back to that perhaps in 2025, and working with them to make sure that the application fairly represents everything that they do. Thank you, Commissioner Donovan.
Other committee members, why don't we first go to Commissioner Sean Kramer, and we'll go to Commissioner.
I would also like to thank the members of the Finance Committee for the great work, and I would like to propose an amendment that I hope will be seen as a friendly amendment to your wonderful work on this. As part of the township's continued efforts to support the growth of the Ardmore Initiative, I move to make this the nonprofit funding allocation. What's the word? Allocation, conditional on the development of an action plan by Ardmore Initiative to fulfill the expectations outlined in Exhibit B of the Ardmore Initiative Reauthorization Plan to the satisfaction of township staff.
Is the proposed amendment acceptable to the maker of the motion?
Yes, that's a friendly amendment.
Thank you.
Okay, the motion has been successfully amended in a friendly way.
And I will re-up my seconding of the amendment.
And thank you very much, Commissioner Whalen. The amended motion has been seconded. Commissioner Stevenson.
No, I did have my hand up, but you deferred to Commissioner Whalen, and I withdraw my hand.
Okay.
My esteemed colleague was trying to steal my second.
I was wondering about that, yes, okay. Okay. Are there any other questions or comments from committee members?
Dan.
Commissioner Bernheim, who has joined us on Zoom. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Zella. One, I also wanted to echo appreciation for the work of the committee. I can go back years. I remember when we first were debating what we should do for this group of applicants, and it was a $50,000 limit, and then having it, creep up to $100,000, and now it seems that it's being predicated on what the appropriate need is for the match of the dollars. But there's a comment made by Commissioner O'Neill, which I sort of piggyback on just a little bit. And it's not so much what the process is internally, but how do we get that internal process known better to other potential applicants for this? And I'll use as an example a group, the Box Lunch and a Book program, who I remember they applied for our CDBG funding. And I know to this day, they're still waiting for the money to come in the door to them. And I know that from an email I received, earlier today. And it dawned on me, this is a group that would have been a perfect, absolutely perfect applicant for these type of funds for the fine work that they do, and to be able to apply. And I would imagine that the committee would have found it appropriate to put another $5,000 into their coffers in order to help what they have done. I would be inclined to make that type of motion to add on to this, but unfortunately I don't have all the data to share with everybody on the board, and don't want to dilute the point by focusing on one committee, that we need to make sure that this is more well known to the community so that they can apply for these funds. So if we find ourselves in the position, as explained by Commissioner Courtney, that we have more funds than we anticipated, it's taxpayer dollars that we get out to the residents for their benefit, not that we hold on to them. So if we can put that on the to-do list, I think that would be a good idea. Thank you very much.
I'll ask our township manager, since two commissioners have raised the issue, if you could comment on how the process is made known to potential nonprofits.
A few comments, Commissioner. This is not a general handout program to any nonprofit, so, and the board has a policy that says that several things. One, that folks that are eligible for this have to be relieving the township of some responsibility that the township might otherwise have to take on. Secondly, you set a policy, which you're violating here tonight, but you set a policy that says that you cap this at $120,000. Well, if we broadcast that out to the whole community, like we just did the ARP grant program, we got $3.1 million worth of requests in. Well, you've only got, by your policy, $120,000 to spend here. So we'll end up having enough money to hand out grants in the amount of a couple dollars to each one if we really do a big broadcast of this program for any nonprofit that thinks they might want some money. So it really has to, you may have to revisit your own policy if you really want to change the way this program goes. We've historically funded a number of these organizations that are doing good work and relieving us of some burdens in the community. And if we add, the more we add to it, then potentially the less you have to support those programs.
Okay.
If I may ever so briefly, it's an excellent point, Manager McNeely, but if you take a look at some of the organizations that are getting funds, they're being funded for projects that we as a township do not do. We do not feed people, for example. We would love to be able to see that there was no food insecurity, but that's not something that, you know, is a mandate under any of the codes that that guide what we're supposed to do. So your point is a good one of making sure that the appropriate guardrails are there. My point was trying to find out that those people that would fit into those guardrails are aware of the ability to make application.
Okay. Commissioner
McCollum. It's alive and active. In fact, on November 9th, Lower Merion Township Police conducted a training program. Officer Darren Swain was well attended, and it was CBS News did a broadcast story that was well received. So it's alive and well, and as I think President Sinai said, there's nothing better than people walking their dogs and keeping their eyes on what the neighbors are doing. So it's a good program. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, Commissioner Courtney.
Thank you, Commissioner Zoff. I just wanted to lend a little bit of my perspective on the community watch issue, since it's come up 3 times now. I agree, it's a great program, and it is one that we want to support. We actually reduced the funding for Community Watch last year, specifically because of issues in their application and around a lack of operations since COVID, right? And we gave that feedback to Lower Merion Community Watch. And so when their application came in again this year, didn't really correct those deficiencies, and it didn't seem like their operations had picked up, we felt like it didn't make sense to fully fund them at their request. Now, next year comes around, if I'm still on this committee and Lower Merion Community Watch picks up operations, I think it should. It's a great asset to this community and fixes some of those deficiencies in the application. I think you will see me, at least, and I'm sure the other members of this committee, arguing to fully fund them. It's just I want to just make it clear that this isn't something against Community Watch, other than to say that we do have a policy, ignoring the fact that we went over the $120,000. We do have a policy around how this funding is allocated, and we would like all organizations to do it, and particularly when we offer up feedback about problems in a previous year, we would think that you would correct it in the current year.
Commissioner Courtney's description of what we discussed is right on target, and the challenge that we faced. And so, as I said a moment ago, and as he just said, we look forward to a much different process with Community Watch in the next cycle. And so with that, are there any members of the public who have any questions or comments? Ma'am, please come up to the podium. and introduce yourself. Let us know roughly where you live, and we welcome your comments.
Hello, my name's Laura Banchero. I'm a resident of Bala Village, and I've been a taxpayer to Lower Merion Township for 11 years now. I come tonight to actually thank you as a resident I've come tonight to thank you for your consideration of improving Bala Village, first as a private resident, but also to thank you for your consideration as a member of the Bala Avenue of the Arts Initiative. We are a new nonprofit, and your seed money will go far to carrying us towards our mission. Our mission is to energize Bala Avenue through the arts, to bring foot traffic to that corridor through cultural programming. We work closely with the Lower Merion Township staff towards this, as well as the City Avenue Special Services District. Our inaugural event was last September and brought 450 attendees to view art, hear music, patronize small businesses, and come together as a community. As the lead organizer of that event, I was able to connect with many people who were very enthusiastic and supportive of our mission. And we welcome any support the Board of Commissioners can offer towards bringing energy and community and ensuing tax revenue back to Bala Village. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the community wishing to come forward?
Hi, I'm Nancy Scarlato. I'm the Executive Director of Ardmore Initiative, and I wanted to comment on the condition that was attached to our funding this year. We are always very grateful for the funding that we receive in this program from Lower Merion Township. It seems unusual that we are the only organization that has been that has a condition put on it. A little bit of background. Again, I found out about this at the 11th hour at 4:42 today. So I didn't really have time to put together a whole lot of comments with the rest of our board. Our agreement to our reauthorization plan contained a number of goals in it. In addition, again, at the 11th hour, we agreed to Exhibit B, which is what is the condition that's being attached to our funding this year. I think our agreement to having an exhibit attached to our reauthorization plan, the Ardmore Initiative Reauthorization Plan, signifies that we will address the items in the exhibit that have to do with the Ardmore Master Plan. And we do plan to address it when the plan begins in 2024. It seems that if we've already been awarded the funding, that perhaps a better way to address this would be to perhaps not fund us next year if we weren't performing up to township satisfaction. But our work plans that we will create will address the Ardmore Master Plan. They will address the balance of the work that's conducted by the Ardmore Initiative, and the part of the condition that is going to be hard to quantify is that this work plan has to be created to township staff satisfaction. And we've already agreed to the exhibit. It's my opinion that the manner in which we address the exhibit and the manner in which we comply with the conditions in the exhibit should be up to the Ardmore Initiative. Of course we're going to do a work plan. Of course we're going to have an action plan, and these are all things that are contained in it. But this condition placed on funding seems that funding for a plan that hasn't begun yet. I mean, I probably need some clarification on what the time frame of the year is, but our plan starts in 2024. I think I don't know when this funding starts, but it just seems to me that that putting a condition on our funding, which has already been through your very lengthy and appreciated process, it seems like it should happen if we're not complying rather than in case we don't comply. And we're happy to work with anyone in moving this forward. But I feel like we need to be given the opportunity to show that we intend to comply with all the conditions that were placed on us by township staff already. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Carlotto. Any more public comment in the room? If not, Jody, is there any more public comment online? Okay. Is there any commissioner response to public comment? Commissioner Stevenson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank the Executive Director Ardmore Initiative for coming forward to sharing the comments. Well, I'm not going to have a public debate here. However, I will say that I will, this is not in a way of saying about restrictions. It's about how do we outline this proposal in a way that it moves forward, that in a collaborative way, and it doesn't mean that these things won't move forward. I welcome the opportunity to have this conversation with you about any concerns that have been present or past that you may not be aware of. So make sure, because I think that would, as you're right, that would be fair for you to make sure that you're aware of those. And if you're not aware of them, then that's not right. But I want to say very clearly, my position is that Ardmore Initiative, the goals that you have forward are ones that I, as a commissioner at Ardmore, that I support. I think our business community, particularly our small business community, is an important part of Ardmore, and my commitment of my colleagues, and not only the Ardmore commissioners, but I'm speaking for all the colleagues, all 14. The success is important. The Plaza, the redoing of the Plaza is done because how do we make sure that we become an attractive part of this community? And Ardmore Initiative becomes an important piece of it. However, there is a disconnect that we want to make sure that we merge as we move forward to grow, that it grows together, and that whatever pieces that are not in place, that we're in place as one. So I look forward to that conversation, and I look forward to making sure that we are clear and transparent as we move forward. So thank you.
Other commissioners with comments? Okay, seeing none, a motion has been made and seconded, and the motion has been friendly amended. And that's what we're voting on. Everybody understand the motion? Okay, all those in favor, raise your hand. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Madam Secretary, that motion carries unanimously, and President Sinai, I'm very pleased to say that the work of the Finance Committee received, my bad, I jumped the gun. I'm still pleased, but I'm not ready to conclude the agenda. Thank you for stopping me. Okay, at this time, we have gotten through 8 budget amendment proposals that are on agenda, so now is the time for any proposed amendments to either budget that have not been, that are not on our agenda. And so I'll call on Commissioner Grimes.
Thank you, Chairman Zeloff. So I am proposing an amendment which is slightly different from what I circulated to the board last week. This is an amendment to restore funds that were allocated by the board in the current year's capital budget for renovations to the cottage in Rolling Hill Park. To refresh people's memories a little bit, a little background, the cottage, which is an older cottage, has been used by the Lower Merion Conservancy for many years, as far back in my recent memory, in any event, and it needs some work. When the Conservancy relocated in 2021, I, in conjunction with Donna Heller, our Parks and Rec Director, and Paul McElhenney, our Public Works Director, discussed alternative uses for the cottage. And we came up with a plan to renovate the cottage for residential use and provisionally to make it available to, for some nonprofit or some community worker who would live there at a subsidized rent. And this board, knowing that last year allocated $115,000 in the capital budget under the affordable housing project number for renovations to the cottage to convert it to residential use from its current state. Since then, the board, we have been entertaining some options that could restore the cottage to use of the Conservancy, or could proceed with converting the cottage to residential use for a community service person to occupy. But the bottom line is that however that works out, and we don't know now, there will likely be township funds that will be required to assist with the conversion or assist with upgrades, even if the Conservancy were to remain there. So what I am proposing is to essentially reallocate the same $115,000 that this board allocated for the 2023 capital budget to the 2024 capital budget. Upon advice, I am proposing that it go in number 4025, which is the facilities improvements project number, instead of affordable housing, which would allow us, if in fact the Conservancy or another nonprofit user that's non-residential goes into the cottage, we would be able to allocate the capital funds for that work instead of for residential work. Just finally, why am I proposing this now as opposed to waiting to see how we come out with either the Conservancy or another user? Because we expect this process to be over very shortly, and frankly, I think it's better not to wait another year to get started with whatever improvements are recommended by staff in response to whatever we do with the cottage. So with all that, I am going to make an amendment to amend project number 4025 to allocate $115,000 in funding for renovations to the Rolling Hill Cottage. This would include it would increase the proposed 2024 appropriation in project 4025 from $1,142,000 to $1,257,000. Thank you.
A motion has been made. Is there a second? Vice President Gavin seconds. Questions and comments from committee members? Okay. Questions or comments from members of the public in the room? Jody, questions or comments online?
No one has their hand raised.
Okay. All right, a motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor, raise your hand. All those opposed? All those abstaining? That motion, Madam Secretary, carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Okay, the floor is now open to any other commissioners who wish to come forward with any amendments to either of our budgets. Okay, seeing none, I got halfway through a sentence, or maybe all the way through a sentence a few moments ago. So wherever I left off, I'll resume that sentence. President Sinai, that concludes the business of the Finance Committee this evening. We've all worked very hard. We've done a lot of preparation. We've worked productively, and I'm pleased to turn things back over to you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Zoloff, and thank you very much to my colleagues who worked very hard this evening and many, many hours before this evening, and thanks to staff as well. This has been very productive and a very good meeting. With that, we are adjourned for this evening. Good night, everyone.
Thank you. Great. Thanks, Thank you for doing that.